Let me tell you something about the Galactic Defense Academy. After 3 cycles as a senior combat instructor here, I thought I had seen every type of cadet waddle, slither, or float through these training halls. Zephyrians with their 6 arms thinking they are unbeatable in hand-to-hand combat. Korthak heavy worlders who could bench press a shuttle. Ethereal luminari who moved like liquid light and struck like lightning. Then the humans showed up. Now I am not saying I was worried when the Galactic Council decided to admit Deathworlders into our prestigious academy. After all, how dangerous could one little pink creature be? Sure, their planet had a reputation, something about surviving ice ages, taming fire and turning everything into either a pet or dinner. But really, when you looked at them, they seemed so soft. No natural armor, no claws, no venom sacs. Just smooth skin and those weird little forward-facing eyes. The combat training facility buzzed with its usual pre-class energy. Cadets from 17 different species stretched, meditated or practiced their species-specific combat forms. The air hummed with translator devices working overtime as insults were exchanged in 43 different languages. Standard academy procedure, really. Then there was Amy Kowalski. She sat alone on the far bench, looking about as threatening as a fluffy and pillow pet. Brown hair tied back in what humans called a ponytail, wearing the standard academy combat suit that somehow looked 3 sizes too big on her compact frame. While everyone else was pumping themselves up for combat class, she was reading. Actually reading a datapad like she was waiting for a transport. "Look at the little Deathworlder," hissed Moran, our resident Scalari bully, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smirk among his kind. Probably trembling in fear already. The other cadets snickered. Even I had to admit, it was hard to take her seriously. She looked up from her datapad for exactly 2 seconds, glanced around the room with those unsettling binocular eyes, then went back to reading. The complete lack of reaction seemed to annoy Moran more than any comeback could have. Commander Tom Molly entered the training area, his 4 arms gesturing for attention. Time for combat class to begin. I settled into my observation post, expecting another routine session of alien cadets learning proper fighting techniques. How wrong I was. "Today we practice multi-opponent scenarios," Commander Tom Molly announced, his voice carrying that special brand of authority that comes from having personally dismantled 3 pirate fleets. "Real combat is rarely fair. You will face situations where you are outnumbered, outgunned or both." Perfect. I could already see the wheels turning in several reptilian, insectoid and hybrid heads. Moran, our charming Scalari representative, was the first to make his move. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with scales that could deflect plasma rounds, he had made it his personal mission to establish dominance over every cadet in the academy. His success rate was impressive, right up until today. "Hey Brandon," Moran called out to the hybrid cadet across the room. "You thinking what I am thinking?" Brandon Torres turned his head, and I had to suppress a laugh. Half Centaurian, half Corvan, the kid had inherited the worst traits of both species. Centaurian arrogance and Corvan pack mentality. A delightful combination, really. His dual-toned skin rippled as he considered Moran's unspoken suggestion. "The Deathworlder does look lonely," Brandon replied, his voice carrying just enough volume for Amy to hear. "Might need some friends to help her with the exercise." Morden clicked his mandibles together in what passed for laughter among the Zerathi. The insectoid was easily the smartest cadet in our class, which unfortunately made him twice as dangerous when he decided to be stupid. His compound eyes fixed on Amy with calculating precision. "Tactically speaking," Morden buzzed, "it would be educational to test human combat capabilities. For academic purposes, of course. Academic purposes. Right." And I was the Queen of Andromeda. The 3 of them huddled together, whispering their grand strategy like they were planning the invasion of a fortress world instead of ganging up on one small human. Other cadets began gravitating toward the group, drawn by that universal schoolyard instinct that trouble was brewing. Through it all, Amy Kowalski continued reading her datapad. Not even a glance up, not a twitch, nothing to indicate she had heard every word of their brilliant tactical planning. This complete lack of response seemed to irritate the conspirators more than any threat or insult could have managed. Does she even understand what is about to happen? Moran hissed, loud enough for half the class to hear. Amy finally looked up from her reading material. For exactly 3 seconds, she made eye contact with each of the 3 self-appointed pack leaders. Then she shrugged, powered down her datapad, and stood up. "Commander Molly," she called out in that flat, unremarkable human accent. "Are we starting soon? I have a xenobiology exam after this, and I would rather not be late." The casualness of it was almost insulting. Here were 3 of the Academy's most formidable cadets preparing to teach her a lesson about respect and hierarchy, and she was worried about being late to study alien biology. Commander Molly checked his chronometer. "Positions, everyone. Let us see how well you have learned to handle unfavorable odds." The trap was set. The prey was walking into it willingly. This was going to be interesting. The training mat cleared as cadets formed a loose circle around the designated combat zone. Standard Academy protocol. Nothing unusual there. What was unusual was the betting pool I noticed forming in the back ranks. Apparently the only question was whether Amy would last 30 seconds or a full minute against her 3 opponents. "Begin when ready," Commander Molly called out, settling into his observation position with what I swear was a knowing smirk. Moran struck first. Naturally. The Scolari had all the subtlety of a plasma cannon and twice the ego. He lunged forward with a textbook Academy assault pattern, claws extended, aiming to pin Amy against the mat and end this embarrassing spectacle quickly. Amy sidestepped, not rolled, not dodged, not executed some fancy combat maneuver we had spent weeks teaching. She just stepped to the left. Moran sailed past her and hit the training mat face first with a satisfying thud that echoed through the chamber. The other cadets laughed. Even I had to appreciate the comedic timing. "Lucky," Morden buzzed, his compound eyes tracking Amy's movement. "Moran, coordinate your approach." "Right," because coordination was clearly what had been missing from that masterpiece of tactical brilliance. Brandon Torres moved next, employing proper Corvan pack tactics. He feinted left, then struck right with a move that should have caught Amy off guard. Instead, she leaned backward, at what looked like an impossible angle, the strike missing her face by millimeters, then straightened up like nothing had happened. "Interesting flexibility," I muttered to myself. What happened next made me question everything I thought I knew about human physiology. All 3 aliens attacked simultaneously, using a coordinated pattern that would have overwhelmed most cadets. Moran from the front, Brandon from the right, Morden launching himself from above in a classic Zerathi aerial assault. Amy moved through their attacks like she was walking through a light rain, a gentle shift here, a casual duck there, a step backward that somehow put all 3 attackers in each other's way. They crashed into a tangled heap of scales, chitin, and bruised hybrid pride, while Amy stood exactly where she had started, checking her nails like she was bored. "Is this it?" she asked, addressing no one in particular. "Because I really do have that exam." The casual dismissal hit the 3 attackers harder than any physical blow could have. I watched their faces cycle through confusion, embarrassment, and finally settling on rage. Dangerous combination. "That. Stop playing games," Moran snarled, untangling himself from his fellow conspirators. "Games." Amy tilted her head with what looked like genuine confusion. "Oh, you mean this is supposed to be serious?" That did it. All pretense of Academy combat protocols went out the airlock. The 3 aliens launched into a coordinated fury of strikes, grabs, and tackles that would have reduced most opponents to paste. Advanced techniques, forbidden moves, everything short of actual lethal force. Amy continued her lazy dance around their attacks. But here was the thing that started bothering me. She was not even breathing hard. 3 cycles of instructor experience had taught me to read the signs of exertion in dozens of species. Elevated respiration, increased perspiration, tensed muscles, dilated pupils. Amy showed none of these indicators. Meanwhile, her 3 attackers were already showing fatigue. Moran's strikes were getting sloppy. Brandon was favoring his left leg after overextending on a failed grapple. Morden's wing beats were becoming labored. "Commander," I called out quietly, "should we perhaps consider stopping this before someone gets seriously hurt?" Commander Molly glanced at me with those knowing eyes. "Oh, someone is definitely going to get hurt. The question is who?" That was when I realized we might have seriously misjudged which species was the real predator in this scenario. Amy stopped moving, For the first time since the exercise began, she stood perfectly still while Moran, Brandon, and Morton circled her like hungry scavengers. The sudden change in her behavior was more unsettling than all her previous evasions combined. Finally getting tired, Deathworlder. Moran panted, his scales glistening with exertion. Amy looked at him with those unsettling forward-facing eyes, and smiled. Not a pleasant smile, not even remotely pleasant. Tired? Oh honey, I was just warming up. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. You know what your problem is, Amy continued, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made it more terrifying. You all fight like you are trying to win a competition. Points for style, deductions for illegal moves, referees to make sure everyone plays fair. She rolled her shoulders, and I heard joints pop in ways that should not have been anatomically possible. Where I come from, we fight to survive.
I did.
What happened next? Violated approximately 17 different academy regulations, and challenged everything I thought I knew about physics. Moran charged first, obviously. All the Scolari had never met a problem he could not solve by applying more violence. Amy did not dodge this time. Instead, she stepped into his attack, grabbed his extended arm, and used his own momentum to send him spinning through the air in a move that definitely was not in any combat manual. The impact when he hit the wall made every cadet in the room wince. Moran slid to the floor and stayed there, making small whimpering sounds. Scolari Physiology, Amy commented cheerfully, dusting off her hands. Great natural armor, terrible joint flexibility. Leverage is your friend, big guy. Brandon Torres had the sense to look worried, but Corvin pack instinct overrode his survival instincts. He lunged forward with both fists extended, aiming for Amy's center mass. Amy caught his wrists. Now I need to explain something about Zentaurian-Corvin hybrids. They inherit enhanced muscle density from both parent species. Brandon could probably arm wrestle a cargo loader and win. The idea that a soft little human could overpower him in a direct strength contest was biologically impossible. Amy proved biology wrong. She squeezed, and I heard Brandon's wrist bones creak in protest. His confident expression melted into something approaching panic as he realized he could not break free from her grip. Fun fact about humans, Amy said, maintaining her crushing hold while carrying on a casual conversation. We are persistence hunters, built for endurance. You see this soft skin? These weak-looking muscles? They hide something your species never developed. Brandon tried to headbutt her. Amy leaned back just far enough to avoid the strike, then yanked him forward by his trapped wrists. His own momentum carried him face first into her rising knee with a wet crunch that made half the watching cadets look away. Pain tolerance, she finished, releasing the semi-conscious hybrid. Lots and lots of pain tolerance. Morton had backed away during this educational demonstration, his compound eyes tracking Amy's every movement with newfound respect and considerable fear. Zerathi are smart, Amy observed, turning toward the insectoid with predatory focus. You probably realized about 30 seconds ago that this was a very bad idea. I concede. Morton buzzed quickly. Exercise terminated. No further combat necessary.
Oh.
But we are having so much fun, Amy replied, taking a step toward him. Besides, your friends started this party. Rude to leave before it is over. The way she moved had changed completely. Gone was the lazy, almost bored defensive posturing. This was focused, efficient, and absolutely terrifying. Every step was calculated. Every gesture served a purpose. She looked like she was built for violence in ways that made our other combat species seem like amateurs. Morton tried to fly. Amy jumped. I want to be clear about this. Humans are not supposed to have that kind of vertical leap. They are ground-dwelling bipeds with stubby little legs. Yet somehow, Amy launched herself 6 feet straight up and snatched Morton out of the air like she was picking fruit. They crashed down together, with Amy somehow managing to land on top despite having been the one who jumped. Morton's exoskeleton made concerning crackling sounds as her weight settled on his thorax. Zerathi evolution optimized you for flight, Amy explained conversationally while maintaining a grip that prevented any possibility of escape. Hollow bones, lightweight chitin, efficient respiratory system. Really impressive, until someone gets you on the ground. She pressed down slightly. More crackling sounds. Then you are basically a bug someone can step on. The casual brutality of it all was educational in the worst possible way. Amy was not just fighting them. She was dissecting their combat capabilities in real time, identifying weaknesses, and exploiting them with surgical precision. And she looked like she was enjoying herself. Anyone else want to play? Amy called out to the assembled cadets, still maintaining her pin on the whimpering Morden. The silence was deafening. Word spread through the academy faster than a plasma fire. Within minutes, cadets from other training sections began filtering into our combat hall. Then came the junior instructors. Then the senior staff. Even Quartermaster poked his massive head through the doorway, which was saying something because that old warhorse rarely left his supply depot for anything short of a full-scale invasion. Amy seemed to thrive on the attention. Since everyone is here, she announced, finally releasing poor Morden, who scuttled away like his tail was on fire. Maybe we should make this educational. Commander Molly, mind if I demonstrate a few concepts about Deathworlder combat philosophy? Commander Molly, who had been watching the proceedings with the expression of someone whose favorite theory was being proven correct, gestured for her to continue. Excellent, Amy beamed. Morin, you are up first. Again. The Scolari had recovered enough to stand, though he was favoring his right side where he had met the wall earlier. Pride, that universal constant, overrode his common sense. I am not finished with you, human, he snarled, extending his claws to their full intimidating length. Perfect attitude. Amy nodded approvingly. Now everyone observe. Scolari combat doctrine emphasizes natural advantages, armored scales, razor claws, superior reach, and impressive physical strength. Textbook predator species. Morin charged again, because apparently getting launched across the room once had not been educational enough. This time Amy caught his clawed hand in both of hers. However, she continued, as if she was not currently engaged in mortal combat. Scolari evolution optimized for hunting large, slow prey on their homeworld. Notice the claw structure. Designed for ripping and tearing, not precision work. She twisted Morin's wrist in a direction it was definitely not meant to go. He roared in pain and tried to break free, but Amy's grip was absolute. Human grip strength averages about 45 kilograms per square centimeter. Scolari scales are tough against slashing attacks but vulnerable to sustained pressure at joint connections. To demonstrate, she squeezed. Morin's roar turned into a high-pitched whine as his wrist bones began to compress. The watching crowd shifted uncomfortably. Several cadets looked like they were reconsidering their career choices. Amy, Commander Molly called out, though he sounded more curious than concerned. Perhaps we should avoid permanent damage. Oh, of course, Amy replied, releasing Morin, who immediately cradled his injured wrist. Just wanted everyone to understand the principles involved. Brandon Torres had apparently decided that watching his friends get systematically dismantled was worse than joining them. He struggled to his feet, blood still trickling from his nose where it had met Amy's knee. My turn again, Amy asked pleasantly. Wonderful. Brandon here represents an interesting case study in hybrid genetics. Brandon threw a wild haymaker that would have decapitated a smaller opponent. Amy ducked under it and immediately countered with a swift jab to his solar plexus. The hybrid folded like a defective camping chair. Xantorian musculature provides excellent power output but requires significant oxygen intake. Corvin neural structure offers enhanced reflexes but increased pain sensitivity. Put them together and you get impressive short-term performance with notable vulnerabilities. She demonstrated by systematically attacking every major nerve cluster Brandon possessed. The hybrid tried to fight back, but Amy moved like she had studied his anatomy from birth. Every strike landed exactly where it would cause maximum disruption with minimum permanent damage. Human combat evolution is different, she explained while methodically dismantling Brandon's defensive attempts. We did not develop to hunt specific prey. We developed to hunt everything. Adaptability over specialization. Problem solving over brute force. Brandon finally collapsed, conscious but clearly done fighting. Amy patted his shoulder sympathetically. Good effort though. Your species will make excellent allies once you learn to work with humans instead of against them. That left Morden, who had been trying to blend into the wall and hoping everyone would forget he existed. And our Zerathi friend here represents the most interesting case, Amy said, turning toward the cowering insectoid. Superior intelligence, excellent tactical thinking, advanced problem-solving capabilities. Morden backed away until he hit the wall. I already conceded. Multiple times. Oh, this is not about fighting anymore, Amy assured him. This is about education. You see, Zerathi are genuinely impressive opponents when they can maintain distance and use their natural advantages. But here is the thing about humans. She walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate and measured. We are pursuit predators. We do not give up, ever. Your ancestors could fly away from danger. Ours followed danger home and made it into dinner. The crowd was dead silent now. Even the veteran instructors looked unsettled by Amy's casual description of human hunting behavior. So when you gang up on a human, thinking you can overwhelm them with numbers and superior individual capabilities, you are making a fundamental error in judgment. She stopped just outside Morden's personal space, close enough that he could probably count her eyelashes. You are not ganging up on prey. You are cornering a predator. Morden's compound eyes darted around the room looking for escape routes that did not exist. Fortunately for you, Amy continued with that same pleasant smile, I am feeling educational rather than hungry today. But the next human you meet might not be in such a good mood. She stepped back and addressed the entire assembled crowd. Any questions about Deathworlder combat philosophy? No? Excellent. Logudters. Dismissed. The silence stretched for several heartbeats before Commander Molly began to clap. Slowly, other instructors joined in, though their applause sounded more like acknowledgement of superior firepower than appreciation of technique. Amy just smiled and picked up her datapad. Now, about that xenobiology exam. The medical bay was busier than usual that evening. Moran sat on examination table 3, his right wrist encased in a regeneration field, while Doc Kelleck muttered things in his native tongue that the translators wisely chose not to interpret. The Scalari's pride was wounded worse than his bones, but at least pride healed faster. Brandon Torres occupied table 5, ice packs strategically placed over various nerve clusters that were still sending confused signals to his hybrid nervous system. His dual heritage meant he got to experience pain in 2 different ways simultaneously. Lucky him. Morton had checked himself in for psychological evaluation. Apparently being casually dismissed as basically a bug someone can step on had triggered some deep-seated species trauma. The trauma counselors were having a field day. 17 different impact points. Doc Kelleck reported to Admiral Vashi, who had arrived to assess the damage personally. All precisely calculated to cause maximum discomfort with minimum permanent injury. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Admiral Vashi, a distinguished Altarian, whose species had been fighting wars since before humans discovered fire, nodded thoughtfully. And the human cadet? Attended her xenobiology exam. I reported from my position near the medical bay entrance. Scored 96%. Apparently missed 2 questions about Zerathi respiratory systems because, and I quote, the textbook information was incomplete. Judge Quintara arrived with that peculiar floating gait her species employed when they were thinking hard about legal implications. As the Academy's chief judicial officer, she had probably already started drafting new combat regulations. Admiral, she began without preamble. We need to discuss the human integration protocols. Indeed, Admiral Vashi agreed. Walk with me, Judge. Instructor, please join us. We left the medical bay and headed toward the administrative sector, passing groups of cadets who were engaged in heated discussions about what they had witnessed. The topics ranged from human anatomy to predator psychology, to whether requesting a transfer to a different galaxy was considered cowardice or practical career planning. The combat demonstration raises significant questions, Judge Quintara continued as we walked. Current Academy protocols assume a certain baseline of restraint among cadets. The human appears to operate under different parameters. Different how? Admiral Vashi asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. She was not trying to win a fight, I found myself saying. She was teaching a lesson. There is a difference. We paused at an observation window overlooking the Academy's main courtyard. Below, Amy Kowalski sat alone at a table, eating what looked like a standard protein ration while reviewing her xenobiology notes. She looked utterly normal, harmless, even. The Deathworlder designation was not arbitrary. Admiral Vashi observed quietly. Their planet produced them. Ice ages, mega-predators, natural disasters that would extinguish most civilizations. They survived all of it. More than survived, Judge Quintara added. They thrived. Then they left their planet and started making friends with species that should have been their natural enemies, which is exactly why we need them. Admiral Vashi concluded. The pieces clicked into place in my mind. The Academy is not just training them to fight alongside us. We are learning how they think, how they adapt, how they turn disadvantages into advantages. Precisely, Admiral Vashi confirmed. Every species in the Galactic Defense Force brings unique capabilities. The Korthak provide heavy assault troops. The Luminari offer stealth and reconnaissance. The Zephyrians excel at space combat coordination. And humans provide something we never knew we were missing. They provide the element of the unexpected. They fight dirty when necessary, clean when possible, and they never ever give up. Below in the courtyard, Amy finished her meal and stood up. As she walked toward the dormitory section, every cadet she passed gave her a respectful nod or stepped aside entirely. The social dynamics of the academy had shifted in a single afternoon. The other cadets will adapt, I observed. They always do. They will, Admiral Vashi agreed. But they will also remember, fear can be a teacher, but respect is a better foundation for cooperation. Judge Quintara made a note on her datapad. New combat protocols will be necessary. Humans appear to require different safety parameters. Or perhaps, Admiral Vashi suggested with something that might have been amusement, we need to raise our expectations for everyone else. As we watched, Amy stopped to help a struggling Fluffian cadet carry his equipment bag. The same hands that had systematically dismantled 3 opponents an hour earlier now gently assisted someone who could not lift 20 kilograms. That, I realized, was perhaps the most unsettling thing about humans. They could switch between predator and protector without missing a beat. 3 months later, the Galactic Defense Academy looked like a completely different institution. The changes started small. Morin began incorporating human-style grappling techniques into his training routine, much to the surprise of his Scalari instructors back home. Apparently, when you have been casually overpowered by something half your size, you start questioning the superiority of natural advantages. Brandon Torres switched his major from heavy assault tactics to adaptive combat theory. His thesis proposal, titled Multi-Species Integration Strategies, Learning from Deathworlder Methodology, was already generating interest from military academies across 3 sectors. Morton had perhaps changed the most. The brilliant insectoid now spent his free time studying human military history, focusing on something called asymmetric warfare. His latest project involved analyzing how humans had consistently defeated larger, stronger opponents throughout their species' development. The results were keeping him awake at night, which was saying something for a species that only required 2 hours of rest per cycle. The humans do not fight like predators, he explained to anyone who would listen. They fight like prey that learn to hunt. The distinction was important, apparently. Other changes were more obvious. Combat class enrollment had tripled as cadets from every species wanted to understand what they had witnessed. The Academy Library's Human Military History section, previously the least accessed area of the database, now required reservation scheduling. Someone had started a betting pool, on which cadet would be brave enough to challenge Amy to a rematch. The pool remained unclaimed. Amy herself seemed blissfully unaware of the revolution she had triggered. She attended classes, aced her exams, and continued to treat the infamous combat demonstration like it had been a mild inconvenience before lunch. Her casual attitude toward the whole affair somehow made it more impressive, not less. Instructor, Admiral Vashi had asked me last week, in your professional opinion, do you believe the human cadet was holding back during the demonstration? I had considered the question carefully. Sir, I believe she was operating at approximately 15% capacity. The Admiral had gone very quiet for a long moment. 15%. Perhaps less. That conversation had led to new Academy protocols, expanded human recruitment efforts, and a strongly worded suggestion from the Galactic Council that member species might want to reconsider their first contact procedures with Deathworlder civilizations. The real test came during the Academy's annual war games, mixed species teams competing in complex tactical scenarios across multiple environments. Amy had been assigned to Team 7, previously known as the Academic Underachievers. Her teammates included a nervous Fluffian medic, 2 Zentorian engineers who specialized in defensive positions, and a Corvin communications officer who had never seen actual combat. They won. Not just won, but dominated every scenario with tactics that violated conventional military doctrine, and somehow worked anyway. Amy's ability to think 3 steps ahead of opponents who had centuries of tactical training was educational in all the worst ways. More importantly, her teammates had started thinking like her, taking calculated risks, adapting to changing conditions, and treating impossible odds as interesting puzzles rather than insurmountable obstacles. Deathworlder mentality is contagious. Judge Quintara had observed during the post-games analysis. She was not wrong. I found Amy this morning in the academy cafeteria, sitting with a mixed group of cadets from 7 different species, all of them hanging on her every word as she explained something about tactical flexibility. The same aliens who had been terrified of her 3 months ago now competed for seats at her table. She looked up as I approached. That same pleasant smile that had terrified 3 bullies into respectful submission. Instructor. You know what they are serving for lunch today? I heard it might be actual Earth cuisine, and I am curious to see how badly they mess up pizza. Some things, apparently, never changed. Even Deathworlders had to eat.